Ray Ratto, NBC Sports Bay Area, covering the Warriors. Kind enough to join us again this morning. Ray, good morning.
Hi, Mom. How are you?
I'm good. Did you lose confidence at all last night in the Warriors?
Well, first of all, I can fix your LeBron headline problem.
Okay.
It is Cavs 52 help LeBron beat Celtics. Just get to the lead. No, I didn't. And it wasn't a question of confidence, because the one thing that I've always thought was wrong with this Houston team, especially once Paul went out, is that they were asking 40-plus minutes of too many guys. And the 27 missed threes in a row, I mean, true, Sam Hinkie couldn't get the Sixers to ever do that. But almost all of those were short and offline, and that tells me they got tired about the middle of the second quarter.
Yep.
I thought the Warriors might have a decent third quarter. I didn't think they'd win it by 18. But, they're sort of, peripatetic sharks. Once they smell blood, they call all their friends. And that's how that ended up. The Rockets basically just didn't have enough cards to play in Game 6 and 7. That's why. That's why the Paul thing was so damaging. They played guys 42 and 43 minutes night after night after night. And you could tell it was bothering them throughout the series, because they missed 193s in the 7 games. They shot 28%. And that's what they do. They are a three-point shooting team. And if you can't do the best thing you do, eventually you die.
I mentioned this in the opening to the show. It always feels like Steph Curry's threes hurt a little more, count a little more. It's almost like you get the guy who's a great dunker and he dunks on somebody. Now it's the three-point shot or breaking somebody's ankles. But do you get that feeling that Steph can demoralize you more than a Klay Thompson three or Kevin Durant or Draymond Green?
See, I actually think it's just the opposite. I think the Thompson threes demoralize you more because you're expecting Curry to go off. When Thompson starts throwing in, now you go, well, okay, here's two guys we can't guard, and now we're completely screwed. The Curry stuff, you're sort of surprised when he shoots poorly, but you expect him to have little runs, where he can sort of put you on edge. But Thompson is almost like sort of, you've been punched in the head, now you're going to get hit in the back of the head with a shovel, and then you're done. So I kind of feel differently about that, but, it's sort of, pick your poison. Either way, you're going to die.
Handicap this team, this Golden State team, because I thought last night was just sort of a microcosm of the entire season, where you're just not quite sure, but then it feels like you should be sure at the very end of the game. So what do you expect in the finals?
I expect them to be bored a fair amount of the time in the first half, because that's who they've become. They cannot beat the idealized version of themselves from 2015 and even 2017. And their whole regular season was about, well, God, when do we have to kick it into gear? When do we, and even through this series, they had full halves where they didn't kick it into gear. I mean, Game 6, the first half, they were awful. Game 7, I thought Steve Kerr was going to throw up on the sidelines. And yet they just go, well, we're going to be there in the end. We're going to be there in the end. We're going to be there in the end. And I don't see anything that is materially different about Cleveland than Houston, except for the fact that LeBron James is better than James Harden. I still see a team that's shorthanded, especially if Kevin Love isn't playing. And Cleveland doesn't even have a version of Clint Capella. So I think, LeBron is going to go nuts, and everybody's going to, continue to have the tedious argument about whether he's better than Michael Jordan. But there isn't going to be much of an argument about whether the Cavs are better than the Warriors, because they're clearly not. I mean, the line for Thursday's game is the highest in NBA Finals first game history. I mean, in some places, they're 10-1 favorites to win the series. I mean, those are ridiculous numbers. I mean, it's off the charts stupid. And I just think that's the issue here, is that Cleveland doesn't have enough things other than LeBron to make the Warriors sort of shake themselves out of their occasional torpor, which is, we'll get around to killing them. We'll get around to killing them, and then they do.
But it's also degree of difficulty. It's almost as if I watch the first half and I'm going, let us set up a hurdle here or potholes here, landmines, and then let's see if we can navigate them. All right, ready? Let's go out for the third quarter. Do you think and maybe this is what you're saying, that they get bored and then they go, okay, what are we down 15? All right, who wants to start? Okay, Steph, you start.
It's funny because all year long, they'd have games like this where they'd be awful for a half. And then at the end of the game, they'd all acknowledge how awful they were. He says, well, that's going to stop. That's going to stop. Hey, it doesn't stop. And I think part of it is, it's not like they're trying to be bad in the first half because they find it amusing. I just think they find it harder to focus for as long as they have in past years. And I think it's because in the back of their minds, they know they're better. And when you know you're better, it is human nature to say, well, we'll get around to finishing this off. And, that's what I thought last night. It's the middle of the second quarter. They're down 11. And then Houston starts missing those three-pointers because that's when the streak started. Middle of the second quarter. That's when they started missing all those shots. And when you want to finish off the Warriors, you don't go into the locker room up 11 at half or up 11 in the early third quarter. You have to be up 23. And Houston couldn't do that because their whole series was get off fast and then try to hold on. And without Chris Paul, you can't hold on.
Talking to Ray Ratto, NBC Sports Bay Area. Do you remember a time when we were debating if Michael Jordan was the greatest player in basketball? Like, who was the greatest player before that we had this silly argument? Do you remember that?
Probably Magic. I remember it. We always do that.
But the greatest of all time, Magic wasn't considered. We're talking about Michael as the greatest all time. So LeBron, is he as good as Michael? I was just curious who Michael was compared to greatest of all time.
I don't know that there ever was one to this extended stretch, only because the only person you could look at is Chamberlain. And most of Chamberlain's greatness was done in the pre-television era. If you hold up his basketball reference page and put it next to Jordan's, you go, my God, Wilt Chamberlain is unbelievable. But nobody ever saw him at the time when it was necessary to see him. With Jordan, it sort of became a de facto, settled argument because there was nobody that you could point to and say, somebody's better than this guy. Maybe you could throw up Larry Bird if you lived in the Northeast. And people in L.A. absolutely did throw up Magic Johnson. It was not, maybe it wasn't a fair fight. And maybe the real argument would have been Jordan or Kareem. But it's hard to compare guys at different positions. So I think, Jordan became the de facto best ever in part because the one guy that you could hold up would be Chamberlain, and nobody saw him enough. And the same thing with Bill Russell. Nobody's going to get 11 rings. And he was an extraordinary player. But again, nobody saw him enough. It's the tyranny of technology.
Yeah, Mike came along at the right time because then you could see all of his games, whereas there was almost this mythological feel to Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. And that can benefit you to a certain point, but then all of a sudden you're seeing, and you're not even believing what you're seeing with Jordan. With Wilt Chamberlain, like he scored 100 points in a game, or Bill Russell had 11 championships. Yeah, but could he do what Jordan was doing? And so I was just curious that so I'm watching last night, and I know this discussion is going to come up this week on these shows about LeBron and where is he with Michael Jordan. And I keep telling people, Ray, just enjoy what you see. This won't happen again. This guy won't happen again. Michael's not happening again. Wilt's not happening again, and neither is Bill Russell. But we get caught up in this petty argument when you can't win. There's nothing that says, well, this is the reason why, or that's the reason why. And I think what happens is we miss really what's right in front of us. And, even with people complaining about, Cavs, Warriors again, wouldn't you give anything to have another Lakers, Celtics in the 80s where they went at it one more time? Good God, that would have been awesome. I never got tired of great matchups.
Well, see, I think your answer should be, when they start talking about LeBron versus Michael, is to just say, shut up and hit the guy in the throat. That way you don't have to hear the argument anymore. Because it is a stupid argument. Because it's not designed to settle anything.
No.
It's about letting the person making the argument say the same things over and over again until you want to hit him in the throat. So just cut to the chase. I hear your argument. Give me your thorax. There, done. And if you hit enough people, they'll stop bothering you with it.
I like it, but is that a misdemeanor, Ray?
I think if you plead your case properly, you might get an NEA grant out of it.
Thank you, Ray. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, take care.
All right. That's Ray Ratto, NBC Sports Bay Area. One of our favorites.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.